boom, 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 boom. Do-do-do. Hello, welcome, creatives, community, and kind folks to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and today, a little bit of a self promotion, kind of, sort of, a little bit. We're going to talk about Level Up Fifth Edition, specifically the character creation portion of it. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a introduction to Level Up Fifth Edition, Advanced Fifth Edition from produced by N-World. This is a little over 1,600 pages of the fifth edition rule set using the OGL and the SRD to create a game with a lot more options, but less power creep for fifth edition. There are a number of projects being handled today. We know that the Black Flag project, has just been given to yeah, Mike. Hey there, co-host. Michael's like, damn, hardcover too. Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I was a contributing writer for this project, so I had access to a slightly cheaper version of the leatherette versions of this series. But for those who are looking to continue to play fifth edition, but they want a full rule set, but they do not want to use money or purchase anything from Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro or Dungeons and Dragons proper, this game already exists. I will show you the covers for the non leatherette versions of these, but of course all these books have double ribbons. There are three books like the traditional Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, Monster Manual. For this, we have the Adventurer's Guide, we have the Monstrous Menagerie, and then right here in the middle, this is the one that I was a contributor for, Trials and Treasures, which is, if I do say so myself, just Angel Shadow. Hey, morning there. If I do say so myself, I think this is the sleeper hit of the three books because this fully embraces the third pillar. But that's me kind of like patting myself on my own back. I'm going to break my arm if I continue to do that. Mike says I was the main writer for Out of the Box Ventures and waited until everyone got their copy before getting an author's copy. And I had to ask 3 times, "Are you serious?" Oh, no. Morse from N World is notorious for paying people well, paying people on time, and getting electronic versions out as quick as possible, and being very upfront and communicative between all the people involved. And there were maybe 30 of us, and then we were split amongst the different books and then the different projects, and then we had it was as a project manager, I don't know how he was able to do it. But of course we can't go through 1,600 pages. and and there are people who have found this channel who are have an interest in Level Up Fifth Edition. They're looking for another option, even though they want to continue playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And so from here on, we will consider this A5E. That is what our in-house name for it was, Advanced Fifth Edition, and O5E is original. Uh, John Rice says, when I was in the Navy, they would encourage re enlistment with the slogan, move up, not out. We would turn it around with move up and out. This would currently apply to WoTC. Yeah. I mean, there's even videos of people like little video shorts and TikToks of people like burning their books and stuff. So you're going to see a lot of fifth edition, dare I say, clones out there. And this is one that already exists. Of course, there's no way this was written in the last month. This was a couple years in the making, and so pretty proud of the work that I think all of us did. But specifically, and we'll get into Trials and Treasures maybe at some other date because I know there are people who want to know about it, and I have to make a full disclosure because, of course, I didn't write I I had some help. I was a consultant and such, but it was written by a lot more people. But if we could just flip open the book, One of the things that I really want to point out in this, because it is February and it is Black History Month, is just the idea of during character creation, and this is something that is not reserved just for Level Up 5e, but across the board, third party creators have already solved the issue when it comes to changing the word race or the racial options in classic Dungeons and Dragons. And it just seemed like uh, Wizards of the Coast was dragging their feet on something that was very easy to solve. Um, yeah. Let's see. Death Angel says, I like 5e. It has its issues. Namely, it's far more player friendly than DM friendly. How does A5E compare? Well, this was this was designed through survey and committee. So N World, if you were a member of N World, you could go on and then they would have surveys during every step of the process about what people wanted. And one of the things that they really wanted was it expanded. They wanted more options without power creep. So, for example, in fifth edition, one of the in classic fifth edition, there are options that are absolutely more desirable than others, right? So if you were a warlock, you had to take Eldritch Blast and all the things that modified it. You just it it it's just something that you just had to have. And here, the warlock Eldritch Blast controversy has been changed because now the Eldritch ability has been turned into a class feature, and it's gotten 4 different options. So you have like a ray or a scythe or a whip. Same thing with like paladin or level dipping. They got rid of that in 5th edition. So there is, I suppose you could use the word nerfing, but yeah, there was a lot of that. So for example, taking a level in fighter was always a good thing because you got all the heavy armor and you got the the surge to take an extra action, and that's been removed, or actually not removed. It's been altered and replaced. So yes, and lastly, instead of exhaustion, it's called fatigue in this game. So fatigue, strife, which is mental exhaustion, supply, and haven. Supply is a generalized term for having to have food, water, repair equipment, camping equipment, and then havens are safe locations. That has been used as a way to mitigate the safety, the extreme safety fifth edition characters have. So it doesn't really matter what level you are. There's a lot of threats. So in more specifically when creating characters, uh, there are backgrounds and things that you want to pick. But in terms of creating your origin, for your genetic, if you want to call genetics a thing in fantasy, we have heritage. So that is your biological genetic physical features, and then you pick a culture. In the old game, it was basically race and subrace, and some of the racial types didn't have subraces, but they were created into them. So in here, you have a heritage and a culture, and then of course that was heavily expanded so that you could pick. Like for example, you could make a human that was from say a dwarven culture or an elven culture, but then it would just expand that to like 30 plus cultures and growing. Mike says D&D could never figure out Warlock. It seemed poorly made from the start, and yet Pathfinder Second Edition got witch sorted in day one. Go figure. Yep. And guess what? Can remember the people at Pathfinder used not only were third party creators to begin with, but they ended many of them worked for WoTC and then left. Right. Um, that's something Wizards of the Coast didn't consider us as peoples. Like we we considered working for Dungeons and Dragons, at least used to, um, um, aspirational, and every brand wishes they were aspirational, right? If you're a young person and you buy, I'm just making example like a Toyota company owns Lexus. They want you to buy their cars and be aspirational. That one day you'll buy one of the, a $90,000 Lexus because you just purchased an $8,000 Toyota. And Yeah, they just ruined it. I can't believe they ruined it in 1 month. They ruined it. Death Angel Shadow says, "Is it wrong that I want to limit magic to legitimate magic classes or magic adjacent classes? I don't like every class having magic." I'm with you. There is in one of the things in fifth edition is that the ranger is a magicless class as well as the marshal, which in other games would probably be like a battle master. So yeah, the ranger here is magicless. Yeah, Mike says Black Flag reads like 5e and Pathfinder 2e had a baby. I think some it's I start smacking my head a little bit when people are like, I got the playtest for Black Flag and it's just like 5e, and I'm going, "Ye- yeah, but that's what's going to happen from now on. All the asides that you see from like MCDM and Critical Role, if they produce their own and so on, is going to be edition Jason. You're not going to find these radical changes, and the reason is because Kobold. Well, first of all, Kobold said that they already said that they're going to do basically make it compatible, which means you're not going to find very many changes. And second of all, they have like 30 plus books that they also want to keep continuing to sell. Making a brand new system actually makes it psychologically makes everything that they've already made irrelevant. Not that it is, but yeah, you're not going to find huge changes and such. Now I'm all for it, but yeah. Mike says that's something DCC gets right. Magic is strange and weird. I wished, and it's still possible for other people to do so, but I wished that during the D&D Next playtest, they were talking about creating modules and not the classic modules, which were another word for adventures, but rules modules where you could plug in and out things like, um, we want to have a gritty setting where life is cheap and is easy to be killed, and they would have a use this rule set which modifies the regular rules, and they didn't do that. I wish they had. Yeah, yeah, yep. I agree with the overabundance of magic, and the overabundance of player option capabilities, and not using the same amount of energy for dungeon masters. I really have a problem with that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so in fifth edition, for example, we have halflings, and you can pick a um, halfling as a genetic form. So you have halfling gifts, lucky, halfling nimbleness. You have your size, fearlessness, and such. And then there's other gifts like you get to pick one like burrowing claws or tough feet, and there's the traits connected to that twilight touched halflings. And then there's when you reach 10th level, you get a halfling paragon ability, which is like increased luck. It's almost as if you are leveling up in your race as well as other parts of your character class. But then when we get over to, and then there's suggested cultures as well, and we do have orcs and such. Plain touched. Plain touched is a generalization for what we would consider tieflings and Asimar. But I'm a little bit disappointed that they didn't go for elemental style and Fey, but under plain touched. But that would have been cool. And then we do have cultures. Mike says when I homebrew magic items are always strange. They're never 100% beneficial or cursed. They're a sliding scale of both. Yeah, I like that. Um, Death Angel brings up like I liked when WoTC focused on setting books. There's a if I explain this to you, there's a reason why you no longer see like um setting books created any longer. And the reason for not creating setting books is because I'm going to need to bring up. I need these other books to wedge this up. One of the reasons you don't see setting books is called siloing. Nope, a little too close. Oh well, it's all right. Siloing is what happens when you have Dark Sun, Ravenloft, Mystara, Greyhawk. And so when they were creating these books, and this is a financial thing, when they were creating these books, people started to enjoy those settings. Greyhawk, Al-Qadim, Oriental Adventures, etc. And what happened is people fell into a particular setting, a silo, and didn't want to come out of that silo to purchase other things, Spelljammer, um, et cetera, et cetera. And so what happened was in the 90s, they overproduced a lot of like box sets and books and such because they were fans of these various settings, but they were simultaneously making money off of it and destroying their own fan base. So people who were in love with Spelljammer and didn't purchase Dark Sun were buying up all the Spelljammer stuff and not spending money elsewhere within their own um, corporate structure. And so that's why you don't see setting based materials, because they know if they put out a Forgotten Realms book, a heavy Forgotten Realms book, or lore heavy, um, what is it? Manual of the Planes, or Spelljammer, or Dark Sun, that people will like them and then not go elsewhere. And they'll go, "Oh, they didn't put out another Ravenloft book. I'm not buying anything." And that was a real thing that did happen. Yeah, Mike says Plain Touch should really encompass Genasi with Asimar and Tieflings. I agree. And Death Angel says making 5e set in Faerun was disappointing to me. Sure, but then they can go back and go, well, what's the most recognizable intellectual property that we can use related to 5th edition? They're going to go for Faerun because guess what? All the books that the Dritz books and all that kind of stuff, writ large, were the most popular commercial success. No one in the public knew what that was. So, yeah. 5e has created its own silo where players want 5e and nothing but. Yeah, I've encountered that since the OGL nonsense. You are absolutely right. There are players who are literally like, I didn't know any of this other stuff existed, and we're us old heads are going like, "Don't! What do you mean you didn't know other versions of D&D existed?" Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Atlantean Mariner even says, "Yep, they've siloed 5e." Yep, it says I only played Dark Sun in 2nd edition myself. Yeah, they didn't, and you could see them trying to poke their heads out a little bit. Where right now, what I'm doing is flipping through a number of these cultures, but you could see where they tried to poke their head out a little bit by mentioning these other realms and other worlds, and it's like, great, thanks for the tease. I sure would like you to Oh, I was going to say something dirty. Okay, I sure would like you to finish the teasing. The you got me all hot and bothered. Let's finish this off. And then they're just like, nope, we're not even going to mention it again. Okay, so what we have here are cultures that you can combine with any racial feature that you would like, and everything from a warhordling to a wildling and a villager, um tyrannized culture and on, is are the cultures that are available. And yes, even though to make this backwards compatible with 5th edition, some of the cultures are racially set, like being a tinker gnome or steam forged and whatnot. Now you may be saying, well, how can you have a steam forged culture if you're thinking of Warforged? And instead it says something to the extent of like, in a world where magic abounds and the need for mechanical wizardry is minimal, there are still some brave minds who believe in experimentation, knowledge, and reason. One such people are the so called Steamforged, talented engineers who value science and social progress. Steamforged lands are usually the most technologically advanced in the region, pioneering mechanical devices that range from gas lamps to flintlock pistols and steam trains. And then, so you get a little bit of the fluff, the mechanics of it. I believe here it might be a dwarf or maybe even a halfling with a what looks like a blunderbuss of some sort. And then characters raised in a steam forged culture share a variety of traits in common with one another. Mind like a steel trap is one trait. Tech savvy and war scholar are another one. So for like mind like a steel trap, you have proficiency in either history, investigation, or nature, and you gain an expertise die on checks made using the chosen skill. Expertise dice has replaced iterative bonuses and penalties. Like instead of +1, +2, +3, you have an expertise die, and expertise die is step dicing. So step dice, you start at D4 and it goes up from there. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12. And if you have multiple expertises from various parts of your character, the dice step up. So if you have expertise with investigation because you're Steam Forged, and you have expertise in investigation because I don't know, you're playing a character that's like some kind of like detective, you would get it from two options, and so you would combining those together, you would step the dice up once. You get it once, you'd have a D4 because of investigation for Steam Forge, and then it would be a D6 because maybe you're playing a detective type character that has expertise in that skill. And so that takes the place of, again, at searching for bonuses, now you're searching for expertise. So here we in the book are our pages and such, but I do want to show you that there is a way to there are electronic, let's see, we want to share this. There's an electronic version of this as well. The a Actually, let me type it in here first because I'm confusing my own self. So at A5E dot tools, let's see, will the link show up? It didn't show up as a link. Let's do this again. uh, let's see. Let's do this one more time. And bump, bump, bump. There we go. As a link, this is the online version of the 1600 pages of Level Up 5e. Now, of course, because this is because this is a you know, it's your online services. Let's share this here. Um, it's not going to give you mm, 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 it's not going to give you the entire book as one complete thing. There we go. Here we go to the it's of course it's in beta because there's lots of things being changed, but this gives you all the rules. You can take a look at them. The right here is an image of the actual color copies of the books. I have the leatherette versions, but of course at the very front we have the adventurer's guide. Um, we have the third book is the monstrous menagerie, and then there's other books here. There's mythological figures, there's adventures in zeitgeist, memories of Holdenshire, and the not Dungeon Delver's Guide. I can't remember the name of the book. But anyway, you have all the options here for 5th edition. All the rules. We have character options, the combat maneuvers. The combat maneuvers are like a point. I would consider them a 0.25, a quarter level addition to martial classes, and maybe one day I'll actually go over the combat maneuvers just themselves because there's so many of them. They each have a name. They're almost like martial schools for the martial classes. They each have a name that kind of represents what martial abilities they have, and then you're able to spend exertion points to use them if you are a martial class. Like, of course, the fighter has a choice to pick all of them, and then there's limited choices if you are a ranger, monk, some of the other martial fighting classes. And instead of the fighter, um, what's it called? What's the surge called? Action surge. It's been split up and expanded amongst the different combat maneuvers so that you have, instead of just having an extra action, you have extra abilities that you can spend with exertion points based on the different combat maneuver schools that you pick. So it's been expanded, but then divided up. It's kind of been, it's like a bigger pizza pie, but sliced up into different slices and then spread amongst more people, I guess. Of course, we have all the spells and the spells listed for each of the classes. We have all the magic items and listed under whether they're artifacts or armor, weapons, and such. Well, of course, we have the monsters listed by their narrative categories like constructs and dragons and giants. And then there's the exploration challenges. The exploration, like I said before, was um, fully written to encompass to become its own fully developed third pillar. I'm so happy about this. Creatures of supernatural, terrain, urban, weather, and journey activities and things like that. And then there's some other useful pages for like treasure tables and journey best practices using the environment, ability checks, all the conditions, a character creation walkthrough, and then a bunch of tools as well. Encounter building, random travel scenery, random social encounters, random treasure generators, things like that. So let's get back to the chat. Let's get back here. All righty. So, boy, I left that at a very awkward looking position. Oh, I know why I left it here, because we're going to get into characters. So here in A5E, we have heritages, and of course, your heritages. If you click that, you have a list of all of the biological heritages that you can pick from. And they've added in, if you can see from the source, this is from the Adventurer's Guide, the main book, but then we also have Gate Pass Gazette. You have to sign up for the Patreon from N-World, and they release these various different things like the Constructed. But here we go with Dragonborn. We have Elf down here, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a long list of them. Human, Halfling, Minotaur, Ooze Folk, Orc and Plain Touch, Spider Folk. If you click Human, it gives you a little bit of the fluff here and human traits. It's a human heritage. They are humans are fat. Of course, you have your age there, size, speed. They are fast learners and intrepid. As a fast learner, with their shorter lifespans, humans can acquire knowledge at a higher rate than more long-lived heritages. Although not all acquire the wisdom to use it. You gain proficiency in one additional skill of your choice. In addition, you require half as much time as normal to train yourself in the use of a suit of armor, tool, or weapon during downtime. And they are intrepid. Your survival instinct is remarkably strong. When you make an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, you can choose to gain an expertise die on that roll. Once you use this trait, you cannot use it again until you finish a short or long rest. And again, the expertise die is a step dice, so it begins at D4. If you have another way to gain expertise with that same roll, the dice just step up: D4, D6, D8, D10, etc. Under human gifts, humanity's most overlooked trait is their physical and spiritual endurance. How a human exhibits this hereditary resilience varies on their personal disposition. In addition to the traits found in your human heritage, select one of the following gifts, and then you can either pick Die-Hard Survivor, Ingenious Focus, or Spirited Traveler. And you pick one of these, and then that becomes your human. And then there's a human paragon gift when you reach 10th level. And then there are suggested human cultures. And the suggested human cultures are right down here, such as cosmopolitan, imperial, settler, or villager. If we go back to characters, we can go back to cultures. And then we have a crap ton of cultures. In order to make it backwards compatible, again, to classic 5th edition, some of the cultures are based on the races that were still listed in 5th edition. So you do have like Deep Dwarf and Deep Gnome culture. Now, of course, any other race or heritage could be from those cultures as well. So, for example, you could have a human that grew up as in a forest gnome culture, or you could have them grow up generally in like maybe as a villager or a nomad or something, or lone wanderer, something like that. Let me go back into let's go back to the chat. And if you guys have any questions, please type in. If you have a question about anything, don't hesitate to pop something in as well. But let's pick one of these cultures. Let's go nomad. So we'll pick the nomad culture. So of course, any heritage can be part of this culture. You have your description of being nomadic. I'm not going to read that. You know what that is. Characters raised in this culture share the following traits: they are nature minded, on the road again, sense weather, and have languages. And so these stack together. So your heritage would be your biology, and then your culture. And what I like about this is that not only do you have a great options as being a player character, but if you're someone who's designing a world and your world, dare I say, is not Eurocentricized, or at least part of your world isn't, then what you can do is start to pick cultures that most maybe I would pick like I like the number three because three always allows you to have there's always conflict, there's always imbalance when two are against one. So if you're designing your world, you can pick different regions of your world and say, hey, if you want to pick cosmopolitan or imperial as a culture, then you're from and fill in the blank of your world, you're from these regions that have that, and then there can be some overlap as well. And then within those cultures, within that particular part of the world, there might be some conflict with those cultures, not necessarily those races. So if you want to add conflict, and I find it pretty a little funny that people are just like, well, what am I supposed to do if my orcs aren't completely evil? Well, humans aren't are we're all the same humans, but we have a lot of conflict too. Just pull from humanity, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that culturally we have differences, and when you have differences, you have conflict. So that's an easy way to make orcs different. They wherever the specific orcs are from that specific culture, they probably have conflict with someone from a different culture, or actually a lot of times it's like literal conflict with the same culture, much like much like having a long-standing religious conflict, even though both religions are like, oh no, we're about peace and acceptance and all. It's like, yeah, okay. So same thing here. So character options, heritage, class. We still have backgrounds. Backgrounds still exist. Here are lists of the backgrounds. We're on A5E.tools, and there's a bunch of backgrounds, all of them rewritten. If you know anything about the OGL and the SRD, the only background that you could legally use is the acolyte. All the other backgrounds you can't pull wholesale from the player's handbook or any other sources. So you have to rewrite them all. That's why sometimes if you buy a setting book, you're like, why are they listing all these backgrounds in here? We already know what they are. They legally can't even. Even now that it's in Creative Commons, there's only one background in it, and that's the acolyte. So you got gambler, guard, guild member, the exile, that kind of thing. Backgrounds. And then once you pick backgrounds, then you have destinies. And basically has officially, unofficially, through Level Up Advanced 5th Edition, replaced alignment. So under Destinies, you have like chaos or coming of age, and these are far more proactive rather than reactive. So there's knowledge, and there's a metamorphosis is pretty cool. Prophecy, revenge, the underdog, uh, wealth, that that sort of thing. Let me get back to the chat and maybe share something else. Mm-mm-mm-mm. All right, so you guys have a couple of comments and questions here. Atlantean Mariner says heritage makes so much more sense. How can races be distinct when you have half elves, half orcs, etc., running around with everyone able to mix? Well, I actually have. Maybe actually I can redo that video. I actually have a video talking about it, not the problems, but why you don't see games using half races. Um, basically. And the reason there's a number of reasons why, but one of them is the fact that if you take 12, I'm just going to make a number. Let's say you have 12 racial features, races in your Dungeons and Dragons classically. If you take 12 times 12, we're actually it's kind of weird. It was 12 times 11 or something. I don't know the exact math, but then you're going to have well past 144 different racial combinations, right? So let's say you have half elf, half orc. Well, do you have half halfling, half dwarf, half tiefling, half Aasimar, half gnome, half, and that's with a human. And then you have orc. So do you have half orc, half elf, half orc, half dwarf, half orc, and it goes on. You would the page count, the cultural statistics of it, the numbers, it just goes, it would go on too much. But then you have other issues where if you want to do this realistically, where you have a thing like, well, can those two races actually breed together? Not do they like bumping nasties? They probably like bumping nasties together, but can they actually breed together? Maybe it's possible, but maybe it causes a lot of mutation or child death or something. Or maybe they're like mules, where a child between, say, a dwarf and an elf is possible, but they are sterile when they are born. And then you just have general cultural issues, right? Like maybe one culture just isn't attracted to the other culture, which could change based on upbringing. And maybe there's just biological differences. The two just can't breed together at all, right? So you get into, I mean, and that's if you want to throw in a little bit of realism in there as well. So Death Angel Shadow says, so how does it handle every race except humans having dark vision? Um, Not all of them have dark vision, but also there are, how do you explain? Okay. Uh I have to give you a long answer to a very short thing. Um, the problem with everyone having dark vision does have the issue of if everyone's special, no one is special. So that problem was already created with fifth edition. So instead, what we created was visual hazards that dark vision just can't pierce through: fog, smoke, dense jungle, particulates in the air, um, uh, uh, um, tapestries. Uh, you can't see through obstacles like dense jungle, a maze-like warehouse, and things. So in exploration, we have things where if visual obscurement, if you need to use visual obscurement to obscure things in your game, and darkness isn't one of them, we just replaced it with something else. But that's something fifth edition created, and it's hard to go back on that. So that's what we did. It's like, yeah, you have dark vision, but you can't see through a dense jungle to see where your ally is at, who's just fallen and needs to be healed. And you have a spell that can heal them at range, but you need to target them, but you can't see them. Or you're in a maze of crates, or you're in a surrounded by a bunch of stone-like pillars in a Arizona-like mesa plateaued like area or something like that, or whatever. Mike says Pathfinder Second Edition does something similar. Ancestry is your race, and heritage is your culture. And I think in Black Flag they use lineage as your genetics and heritage as your culture. Everyone's just using the same thing. I wish somebody would open up a thesaurus and pick another word like bloodline or something like. Everyone's using every third party person trying to correct what fifth edition refuses to correct in a good way, like picking species, which I think is far too scientific of a terminology. I'm just like, there's a thing called a thesaurus. I can look one up right now. Morning there, Don. Rosavelli says, I like level up A5E. It's a lot of options for those who want it. Yes, it's more broad than high, right? So power creep creates height, meaning like you keep getting more and more abilities stacked on what you have, and A5E makes it broader, so you have more options laterally so to pick from. So that's really how they tried to stomp down on the power creep. Death Angel says, honestly, I supported the idea of moving from race to an alternative. In the real world, we only have one race, exactly humans. But obviously, in a fantasy world, you could have many others, and you don't, like we don't really talk about it, but like, can it, do dragonborn really breed the same way as say humans do? You know, I mean, the assumption is yes, but it does feel kind of odd, you know. Here, let's get rid of this. Let's move this down. Oops, 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 oops. There we go. Sorry. Let's see. Wayne says, "Hey Wayne, I only ever used orcs in their mythological sense as monsters. I think the old use meant a generic term for demon or beast. That is true. That uh they were demonic or otherworldly in nature, which is another reason if you want to have orcs in your world. The problem is people. I don't understand why we already have examples of how to accomplish this. Why people are treating orcs any differently than dark elves and drow or tiefling or something. I mean, tieflings are literally the physical embodiment of evil. They are the physical representation of evil. They have horns. So many of them have tails. Some people have the red skin. You're casting magic and evil. They are very charismatic. Like, and everyone's like, I don't have a problem with tieflings. So I don't understand why people would have a problem with fully realized, culturally accepted, or culturally dynamic orcs when we already have an example. I mean, literally, Dragonborn are the physical embodiment of dragons that historically have ravaged the countrysides since the 70s. Mike says dark vision is misunderstood and misused in 5e. It sure is. It's like having 90s era low light goggles. In other words, duotone vision, no super details, unable to judge color, etc. Players seem to think dark vision is magic. I see everything, and it's not. That's actually true. As a matter of fact, let me give you a good example of black and white vision. Your character crawls through the sneaks crawls into the next cave. You hear something dripping from the ceiling. A pool of liquid is in front of you. Hey, my character has dark vision. Great, you see a gray pool of fluid. Well, what is it? You don't know. It's a gray pool of fluid. Is it a gray ooze dripping from the ceiling? Is that blood? Is that oil? Maybe that's just water. Is it hot or cold? What kind? Is it ink? You don't know. It's black and white, right? Maybe you might get, if you had infravision. Remember back in the day with infravision that would give you heat, hot and cold surfaces. Yeah, I wish they had more things like that. But yes, black and white vision. It's also people realize that you have disadvantage on perception checks in low light conditions. So if there's literally no light, no, you're not blinded, but you can see, but you also have -5 or a disadvantage on visual acuity, and no one seems to use that either. Also, you have distances as well. So if a horde or if those horde of orcs are coming after you and your dark vision is 60 feet, you might see 8 of them running at you. You may hear what sounds like dozens and dozens of them, but you can't. Not only can you not target them, you can't see them because they're out of your 60-foot range. So attacks could come from beyond 60 feet that you would not be able to see with a dark vision as well. John Wright says it would be good if different races that have dark vision have different dark vision ranges, like subterranean races having extra long range, while surface dwellers may have it but at short range. Exactly. And we don't really often focus on the ranges as well. Um, Mike says if elves were used in their mythological sense, humanity would kill them on sight. Yeah, but people want to play them. That's the problem. Having get creatures around who might steal your children, replace them with straw dolls or changeling too is risky. Yeah, that's and the issue is that we as players are we there's too many edge lords out there. So the more that which is why dark elves have become an option. It's why tieflings have become an option. It's why orcs and half orcs and bugbears and goblins and dragonborn have become options because everybody wants to play the bad guy, and we're running out of bad guys to make good guys to play. So that's the issue. Yeah. Elves in old mythology were not a people; they were something that came in the night, sat on your chest and stole your breath. Also, a lot of this is stolen from Tolkienian elves as well, and other races, dwarves and such. So a lot of that. Death Angel says, I agree with the notion that dark vision is misunderstood. Most DMs fail to realize the limitations of it, and a lot of players wouldn't want to deal with the limitations of it. So everyone just shrugs and goes, "Yeah, you can see." And that's kind of why it's done that way. Don Roosevelt says orcs are monsters, period. The good races of men, humans, versus the monsters of chaos. Dwarves, elves, halflings were demi-humans. Those were the only PC races. I'm not a fan of monster parties. Well, the thing is, people say orcs, but no one ever includes like dark elves, dragonborn, tieflings into that group. And I don't have a choice if you pick one or the other, but my feeling is be consistent, right? Like why if a player can pick orc or half orc as a player character function, then they need to be fully realized. It, using one or the other is where the racial inequity comes from. It's like, oh, so uh, it's how othering happens, as opposed to like, for example, everyone's like, oh, orcs are monsters. Why isn't there a monster entry for Dragonborn? Right. Infravision and ultravision were the two. Infravision was the heat, and ultravision was the darkness. Yep, Mike says infravision was screwed when it came to undead or sentient plants. No heat differential. Yep, absolutely. I'll put that out there. Yep, and it's also generally limited to black and white, in addition to the range. Yeah, like Death Angel said, from a DM perspective, there are far too many playable races. I agree. It is too. Sometimes some players going to pick something out of like some strange book or something, and you just do the face plant like, oh, really? I want to play Tabaxi, and you're like, oh, how do I explain Tabaxi in my world? It's just stupid, and then you have to end up starting out with the word no, and it's unfortunate. Um, all right. Mm-mm-mm. It was human centric. Blah 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 blah. Okay, yep. So, to to actually talk about level up just a little bit more here, we do have the adventurer's guide. It's basically the player's handbook. Yep. Yeah, talk about too many subclasses and things like that. Yep. Fifth edition, we all know that it just became far too player centric, and then what ends up happening is, as a dungeon master, you end up having to how do I you end up having to say no far too soon in your like session zero, which automatically sends off a little bit of resentment. And but it's like either you give the option or you don't, and if you don't give the option, you get into some other issues. um you know, fulfilling your destiny. Yeah, we need to have, maybe I'll do that next week. Well, because I'll have this today and tomorrow, and then next week maybe we'll get into like into how do I explain this? Getting into maybe more the nitty gritty of various things about like, maybe we could talk about like talk about the taboo things like power creep, and the reason why um, dungeon masters are so upset with so many player options, when players who've never ran a game or narrated a game or did any type of storytelling or something, maybe we can get into like, hey, listen, here's a reason why it's not fun to have to handle all these like side cases, and not fun to have to police all these third party products that um are building in power creep and such. And the reason why power creep is terrible in the first place, when the numbers when your numbers get high, and the only way to confront that is to have bigger, better numbers. It basically, having +2 and the dungeon master having +2 is no different than having +20 and the dungeon master having +20. um it's just described differently, but it's basically the same thing. Don Roselli says, my games are mostly human centric. And yes, I play demi humans as racist class. Fight me. No, no, no. I'm not against that at all. Hey, listen, I'm an OSR OSR type dude myself, but really the reason for the OSR having like halfling as its own race class or elf as its own race class because that pulls from the classic Tolkienian of those things. The elves were a warrior mystic culture, and there wasn't any other cultural descriptor for them, so they became a monolith, and that's why you only have elf as a particular thing in those old games. A, it's easier choice, but B, it's because you didn't have 13 different types of elves all living in all different types of regions with completely different cultures and capabilities and things like that. I'm with you, Death Angel. He says, I'd kind of like to see a classless D&D game. Actually, it would be kind of easy. And when I say easy, it would be monotonous to do, but you could just break. You could literally break up every single class, every single capability, all the levels, and then at first level pick what you want. Second level pick what you want. Third level pick what you want, and just put it across the board, and then have one centralized pool of resources to fuel the things that you picked at different levels. So, for example, let's say you want to pick rage at first level and then some kind of like sneak attack at second level, and then something from the cleric at third level, and something from the fourth level. And then you have maybe a pool of resources, probably like your proficiency bonus, number of times to use those things for your character. And whenever you picked it up, when you let's say you get to fifth level and you pick up rage, it would be as if you picked it up at first level. It would be it's possible to do it. It's possible to break it all up and just make it into bits and pieces, but it would be daunting just organizing it all, right? Don says, I'm glad you can see where I'm coming from, Deep J. I love TTRPGs of all sorts. Gaming with friends is a joy of life. Hell's yes. I don't listen, I'm well, first of all, personality wise, I always fall positive. So maybe I don't go for like I'm not a person who likes to encourage uh, pain and suffering amongst other people by showing all the evil stuff, right? But I will say that like I think it's pretty ridiculous to police other people's fantasy. How can you gatekeep somebody else's imagination? That's pretty ridiculous. I don't, and I see people trying to do that, and it's like you do realize that's not only is that impossible, but it's kind of ridiculous. Desert Angel says skill based would be kind of interesting. Yeah, skill based or trait based, right? Like you could like you just instead of a race, class, background or something picking what your saving throws are, you just pick two, right? All that kind of stuff. Wayne says I've always called 5e 5 easy. I guess you're calling it 5e Edie mode. Yeah, because it's like it's kind of easy part. Yeah. If I ran it, I would not allow simple history, perception, etc. checks to solve a problem. Get info, intimidate, etc. That's not role playing. Players should role play. Yeah, listen. I There's a middle ground, right? I don't know where this came from, where someone like says, "I walk into a room, I make a perception check. What do I see?" I don't. I don't see that in the rules, and I don't know why that's spread around. No, I know exactly what you meant there, Wayne. You're good. You're good, Dub B. Um, the, I My thing is, you only get to make a roll based on what you're doing, and hey, we can stop rolling if you just tell me what you want to do. I look behind the tapestry. Guess what? You see something. I move the throne. Hey, there's scratch marks on the ground in front of the throne. Maybe it slides. I try to move the throne. Guess what? You move it. You see there's a secret door behind it. That's all it takes. Walking into a room and going, well, DM, what do I see? Makes zero sense, right? It's like I would never. Oh, you see a room. And also, here's another thing. Why are we always where did how is it that perception as a skill became other skills? Perception is not investigation. Perception is you see something. Oh, you catch something out of the corner of your eye. Great. What do I see? You you saw something out of the corner of your eye. You saw movement. If you want to investigate that, or you want to use an insight check to figure out, yeah. Like Don says, insight checks is like lie detectors is always fun. I hate that. Yeah, same here. Same here. It's not lie detection. It's oh, you get a sense of, right. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Mike says if you want problem resolution to occur otherwise, say so at the table. Exactly. And of course, you set all of this up at session one, right? You set it up at session one, session zero. So when you set up at session zero, you say, hey, listen, don't don't be top headed where you look down at your character sheet and you want to figure out what you're doing. Let me know what you want to do, and then we can figure it out. I once had someone. It wasn't an argument, but someone said, like, you do realize there's a skill in a single human being able to crack like a 2-ton block of of marble. And I said, yeah, there are people who have the skill. They use these little uh, divot crampons or something, and a sledgehammer, and a single human being can break a 5-ton block of marble. Given time, there's skill in that, and my thing is that like if people use their OSR version of this, if you use your imagination, use the tools in front of you, then yeah, maybe you know what we could talk about like unintended consequences of the changing of a lot of these things. Maybe that's what we'll do next week. We'll get back into the old style. Let me become a talking head again. Oh man. Mike says, as DM, I'll tell you what you see for free. Yeah, it's perception, but at a glance. If you want more than that, start poking around. Exactly. And the whole point of having passive perception is the mechanized term of using, and this is Sly Flourish even mentioned this, and I've used this term a million times in games without having a mechanic for it. And you listen, you guys will hear when you hear what I have to say, you go, yeah, I understand you. What you do is you use the term your character knows, your character sees, your character remembers, your character's experienced that. You understand. You've seen this before. All you have to do without having to use die rolls and without making the character seem like they, and as well as making players feel like they're professionals, that they are experts, that they feel empowered, is just before you state something in front of it, say, your character is experienced with, your character is a professional and knows. Let me give you some examples. Um, hey, Fightor, you step out of the inn, a little drunk and woozy, having a good time, singing some bawdy bawdy songs and dancing with the with the patrons. But when you step outside, suddenly, just suddenly, you realize a tingling in the back of your neck. You know, two people step out of the shadows in front of you. But with your experience, there's got to be at least one. No, two. No, no. You sense three individuals behind you. But even without your weapons on you, even with a little drunkenness, you know you could take these guys very easily. So what do, right? What did I just describe? I just described probably a higher level PC fighter being surrounded by a bunch of thugs, 0 level, maybe 1 level, right? And that is what a passive skill is. Right? That is like, oh, hey, wizard. You remember back in your school days that you read these runes before. Hey, cleric, this is a rival religion in the region. You thought they had left years ago, but you just found evidence of it. Hey, rogue, there are pickpockets in the bazaar, and if when you look around you see across the bazaar the individual who's corralling the pickpockets. They look at you, you look at them, you give them a nod, they give you a nod, and they move on. You know, the pickpockets are going to leave you alone. Like that's what the mechanical version of passive skill checks are. Des Angel says spotting is not the same thing as listening or hearing any more than hiding is the same as moving silently. Yep. Old school OSR, move silently, hide in shadows. Yep. Passive perception has one use for stealth checks. It's a skill challenge. A target's passive perception is your DC for stealth. Beat that number. Yep. 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 not big on passive skill checks, to be honest. Well, everything is passive skill, right? Like if you are not going to make a die roll and a character knows a thing, then they already have a passive. That's what it is. It's just all we're doing is mechanizing the very thing that players already have. Hey, fighter, you know what killed these people on the side of the road. Hey, warlock, you've seen this writing before. As a matter of fact, you've woken in woken from a nightmare and seen these runes. It is your own patron. Is someone else a patron of your same uh, of the Raven Queen as well, or something like that? All of that is passive. There is no separation. We create our own barriers for those kind of things, so there is no separation. Yeah, Mike says I use characters' background as knowledge for free. Are you from an industrial area? Yeah, that smell is burning oil. You've smelled that 1,000 times. Exactly. That's exactly what that is. Hey, you grew up in a city of shadows. Of course, you know where pickpockets are at. Of course, you know where the lookouts from the local gangs are on the rooftops or something. Of course, you know the back alleys. Of course, you know uh, the markings on the wall or the jewelry that they wear that means that they belong to different gangs or something like that. You know, tattoos or whatever. Like all of that is passive. Anytime you don't roll the dice and players are doing something and succeeding at it, that's all passive. Yeah, is Mike says, is your character from a culture that lives in the trees? Quote, that vine around the bush is poisonous. You learned that at a young age. Exactly. Well, here's another one. Trolls don't heal if they are burned or acid is thrown on them. Anybody remember that one? That's a passive thing. Hydra's the same way, which I kind of wish we had more puzzle monsters. Oh, that's a good one. That's next week. Thank you very much for coming up with what we're going to do next week. Yeah, that's what we're going to do next week. Anyway, wanted to introduce. I barely introduced a little bit of Level Up 5E. These are the leatherette versions of the books. We have the Adventurer's Guide, the Monsters Menagerie, Trials and Treasures. I have to. I got to do this. There are. Let's see if I can find it here. Um, in here, there are environmental challenges that are given experience points like you would fight a creature, but they're environmentally created. No, oh, there will be oh no. We're gonna do a Friday show, and this is gonna start Monday. The reason for no Friday was because I had I had a medical issue. Um, I, maybe I'll show pictures, but I had to have there's a prostate thing going on, and I would not particularly like to share that, or maybe I could share it on my OnlyFans. Hmm. Dungeons and Dragons OnlyFans. Hey, you guys tell me if I should open up a put that on the thing. Don't donate to my Patreon. Donate to my OnlyFans. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm a man of a certain age, and I got. Sometimes you gotta dip the stick into the oil to make sure the engine's running fine, or ill. Anyway, you got to make sure you pinch a loaf, right? You know what I'm saying? You know, I don't know what I'm talking about. Um, all right, so this is this is one of my favorites. I got to throw this in here before we get out of here because I got to pat myself on my own back trying to break my arm here. So this is a tier 4 supernatural. Uh, there we go. I'm messing up my. There we go. It's Divine War, 4th tier supernatural environmental encounter. This is in Level Up 5e. Of course, this is in the Trials and Treasures book. All right, so what do we got here? What do we got? So, would you recommend these books to us crotchety old DMs? Yeah, yeah, I would. I would. Yeah. Wayne's like, yeah, I get it. I'm older. Yeah, yeah. Well, but in the Trials and Treasures books, and of course it's in alphabetical order, this is one that I'm really happy that they kept because it fills this part, and they donated a full page to the rest of it. But essentially they are they are encounters. And I know Dungeons and Dragons, we think of, whenever you hear the word encounter, everyone thinks combat, but these are encounters that you can't fight. You just have to navigate them and be smart about it. And so we got a challenge rating of 20, 25,000 XP, DC of 23/18. Disney's, I'll be 50 next month. Yeah, I'm 52. Am I 50? Yeah, I'm 52. Jeez, I had to remember that. Yeah, old gray beard and everything. All right, so here the skies rain blood and bolts of necrotic lightning strike the earth as celestials and fiends clash overhead in a battle of truly epic proportions, filling the sky with divine violence. Swarms of angels trace blinding radiance as demons and devils spout hellish flames in pursuit, and for every lance of pure light cast down onto the conflict from the clouds above, there is a swarm of darkness that rises up to consume it. Ooh, wait. Oh, 61. Seriously, Wade? Wow. Okay. All right. This is the crotchety old network. Okay, I'm feeling this. Um, so anyway, we have here like divine interventions. You roll a D8 on this table on the right side here. Um, Yeah. Oh, intervention for every hour. The effect of so many extraplanar beings unleashing their power in such close proximity has an unintended impact that falls upon the party. Each adventurer rolls a d20, and whoever has the lowest roll becomes the target of this effect. When there is a tie, the point in space between the two is targeted. Instead, roll a d8 and reference the divine interventions table. Creatures with good alignment trait have advantage when saving throws against celestial divine interventions, and creatures with the evil alignment trait have advantage on saving throws against fiendish divine interventions. And of course, they are listed as fiendish, celestial, and either at the bottom. And then there's possible solutions. Uh, under this one, it says there is no easy way to get through this challenge. The PCs must simply push through and suffer the effects of the divine interventions. There is no way to end the war. They might choose to join the fray on either side, and powerful magic such as a wish could delay the battle long enough for them to leave the region. With a persuasion check oops, to convince a squad of celestials or fiends that the party is neutral to the conflict, the adventurers receive either an angelic blessing or hellish enchantment, gaining an expertise die on saving throws against the exploration challenges divine interventions. And then it goes into like fiendish things like blood rain, the fallen, harmful blast, restorative ray, stunning utterance, sunburst, lethal utterance, and exsanguinated horror. Some of them are pretty cool. Like number 2 is the fallen. The blazing corpse of a slain celestial plummets to the ground, landing in a square adjacent to the target. Each creature in a 40-foot radius makes a dexterity saving throw, taking 35 or 10d6 fire damage and 35 or 10d6 radiant damage on a failure or half damage on a success. The target has disadvantage on the saving throw. The explosive inferno damages objects in the area and ignites unintended flammable objects. Things like that. What's something else? Celestial, stuttering utterance. The target clearly hears the unfiltered song of Celestial's rage, leaving it dumbfounded. Uh, Lethal utterance. The target clearly hears either a fiend utter a prayer or a celestial scream a curse. Exsanguinated horror. Two of the divine combatants from above swoop down amidst a furious duel soaring past the target. Creatures able to see witness the unfiltered purity and depravity of celestials and fiends sliced open in a gruesome display. Each creature in a 30-foot radius, including the target, makes a wisdom saving throw, becoming frightened for 1 minute on a failure. At the end of every round, a frightened creature repeats the saving throw, taking 4d10 psychic damage on a failure or ending the effect on itself on a success. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. I went on with that because I just appreciate that. Just Angel says Miss Death is trying to find a pro DM to run a one shot. Oh, for my birthday. Been a forever DM for 20 plus years. Sounds familiar. Sounds familiar. Wow. Happy birthday, by the way. Or wait. Oh, that's our 20th anniversary. Wait, okay, so what's our birthday? Oh, wow. Wow. Well, congratulations. You know what? We should do some people shout outs as well. Gonna have to make a change on that. All right, guys. You guys, as my co-hosts, actually control the show a lot more than you think you do. So next week we will go back to a normal standard. Monday, basically, we'll go back to a normal standard. I do have some other games we can go through, but tomorrow's going to be Edrigor, which is a fate based indigenous peoples game. It's pretty cool. And then we'll end it there. I've got others, but I want to go back to our usual, like we used to do Monster Monday and what was it, like Trope Tuesdays or something else, Theater of the Mind Tuesdays, and then we had World Building Wednesdays and Exploration Thursdays. It was Third Pillar of Exploration Thursdays and Future Fridays. So we may go back to that, just because everyone does not need to tune in every day for like over an hour. It's not necessary for that, and it takes up a lot of your time, and your time is very valuable. Also, we can also do a lot more things, so that usually what happens with us older folks is that we think we have an idea, we can't remember, and then once we get up and leave, we end up realizing, oh, I forgot to, which is why I used to do things, take one subject and spread it across all week, so that when you think of something Monday but are unable to respond or make a comment or drop something in a video or whatever, Tuesday we can continue the conversation, because usually that's what happens. When he's like, "Have a good day, everybody. Got to go scrub the toilets." Yeah, I got to head off to work. You guys have a great one. Thank you so much for being part of the show. I'm gonna have to take Dungeons and Dragons out of my exit little promo thing, but and actually come up with some music. Come up with an outro. So here's our outro, guys. Thank you very much. Please like, share, subscribe. If you stayed here this long, I'm eternally grateful. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great one. I and the rest of us will see thee tomorrow. Peace.